Hello everyone, Kitsunatu here. In DZZ, it's pretty common knowledge that S-rank characters are better than A-rank characters, but that doesn't mean that A-ranks aren't valuable in their own right. Even if you have a large number of S-ranks, A-ranks can still provide immense value to your account. The only problem is that similarly to S-ranks, A-ranks require time and resources invested into them in order to provide value to any given team. The same time and resources that could be going into your S-rank agents. So in this video, we're going to be ranking every A-rank character currently in the game based on how worth it is for you to invest somewhat heavily into them. But before we get into the ranking, let's lay out the ranking criteria. Or you can just skip to this timestamp if you don't care. We'll be ranking each character on a tier list that ranges from T0 all the way down to T5. Now, for the actual ranking, we'll be assuming every A rank is M6 because certain A ranks unlock their full potential with Mindscapes, though I will try to specifically call out when a lack of certain Mindscapes diminishes the value of an agent by a good amount. We'll also be generally assuming that you are mid to late game, but we'll also factor in how useful agents are in the early game. Now, to begin our ranking, let's discuss the A-rank DPS agents, specifically the A-rank attack agents. All three of these guys can be discussed together because they share mostly the same reasonings as to why they are placed where they are. The main issue with these guys is that they are primarily meant to be run as hyper carries, but their overall damage output isn't the best. Don't get me wrong, with the right builds and teams, you can get decently impressive performances out of all three of them, but in most situations, replacing them with almost any other S-rank character will yield significantly better results simply due to their higher base stats, stronger core passives, and higher emotion values. It is important to note that in the early game, these characters will carry you until you are able to replace them with better S-ranks, so there is some extra value there. With that being said, I feel pretty comfortable placing all three of them in T3. They are agents that are pretty much useless entering the late game, but their reliability in the early game bumps them up a few tiers in my opinion. Still staying on the topic of DPS agents, let's move over to talking about Piper. Piper is a character that doesn't suffer many of the same issues as the other A-rank DPS agents. Piper's fast anomaly application, team-wide damage buffs, and easy to understand gameplay loop make her a very viable option in almost any anomaly comp. Whether you're slotting her in as a main DPS or sub DPS, she will still easily provide value. And that's all at M0. If you're able to get her to M6, she can perform comparably, but definitely worse, than Jane, a limited 5-star character, which is very impressive. Her only major downside is that she isn't a super valuable agent if you aren't already invested into Anomaly, simply due to how her performance drops by quite a bit when ran as a solo hypercarry, but even in that aspect, she's arguably a better option compared to the other 4-star DPS agents. With that being said, I feel comfortable placing her in T1. The only thing keeping her from being T0 is the fact that she isn't that useful outside of anomaly comps, but her utility is enough to justify her high placement in my opinion. Rounding out our DPSs, we have Ben, and I'm not gonna lie, Ben sucks. Don't get me wrong, Ben does mostly provide value for your team. The main issue is that Ben's damage is so bad and his utility is so negligible that you'd never really want to run him on any team, regardless of whether or not you had 5-star options. I honestly go as far as to say that Ben may just be the worst character in the whole game, and it's actually genuinely tragic how bad he is. There's a reason why all the other A-rank DPSs have significantly more clears than him, and also, his gameplay just kinda sucks in my opinion, which also warrants bonus deductions. With that, I feel it's pretty clear that heavily investing into Ben is not something you should be doing, which easily plants him in T5. You need to be genuinely crazy to try and clear endgame with Ben. Honestly, you'd have to be genuinely insane. Who could possibly ever do such a thing, I wonder? Now that we've finished discussing the DPS agents, let's move on to talking about the A-rank stun agents, starting with the poster girl herself, Anby. Anby suffers from some of the same issues that the DPS agents suffer from in the sense that her usefulness is exclusive to the early to mid game, and she has practically no use past that. Anby's main issue is that she doesn't provide any buffs or debuffs that her team can take advantage of, which means that the only value she provides to her team is stunning the enemy, which admittedly, she does quite well. What I'd say gives Anby the slight edge over an agent like Billy is that I feel like most players will get 3 DPS agents before they get 3 stun agents, which means that Anby will have a spot on a team for longer. This is why I feel like Anby is solidly in T2. She provides enough value in the early game to warrant a decent ranking, but her value diminishes too easily for me to consider a higher ranking. Now moving over to our second A-rank stun agent, Pulchra. Pulchra is an incredible agent that can fit on a wide variety of teams. Her off-field stun capabilities help enable characters who appreciate more field time, and her damage taken debuff is very versatile. She's definitely the highest value agent we've discussed so far, and it's really easy to see why. But there's one massive downside that makes her value diminish immensely, being that Pulchra's debuff will only apply to aftershock attacks unless she is M6. Since we're only factoring M6, this won't affect our ranking, but it's important to note that Pulchra drops to equal to or slightly above Anby in terms of value without her M6. With that in mind, I feel comfortable putting Pulchra solidly in T0. She may falter without M6, but her widespread utility makes her an incredibly solid choice and definitely worth investing in if you don't have enough S-rank characters. With that done, we can now shift our focus over to the last selection of characters that we are yet to discuss, that being the support characters. The first support character we'll discuss is Lucy. Lucy is a very solid and splashable supportive option on pretty much any type of team. Her decent 600 attack buff and high uptime make her an all-around incredibly versatile option that can be placed in basically any team. She's also capable of outputting a decent bit of extra damage and daze through her bores, which only further pushes her value. Lucy's main issue is that her 600 attack buff, while still good, isn't very impressive compared to what other supportive agents, limited or otherwise, can provide to the team. But even so, Lucy is still up there in terms of value. Now with all that in mind, I believe that Lucy can be placed into T1. The only thing keeping her from being T0 is the fact that her attack buff is a bit underwhelming compared to other supports.
Sorry to interrupt y'all, but I just like to say really quickly that if you're enjoying the video, then please feel free to leave a like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It really helps me out. Do not worry, the C teammate tier list is on the way and hopefully will be released sooner than this video has been released compared to the last one. So just stay subscribed for that. That video will come out. Now back to your regular scheduled programming.
Moving on to our next support, we have Yinhu. Yinhu is almost exclusively a support for Rupture agents, and that significantly screws him over when it comes to his ranking, because it basically means that if you don't have Yizhuan, he's pretty much useless on your account, at least until another Rupture character is released. The main thing keeping him from being T5 along with Ben is the fact that if you do have Yizhuan, he becomes the best supportive option in the game for her. This will also be applicable for any future DPS agents that are released, and even if more Rupture supports are added to the game, Yinhu will still remain valuable. But speaking purely on his current position, he is very valuable if you have Yizhuan, but very useless if you don't have Yizhuan. And for that reason, I place him in T4. Not quite useless, but also not very useful. Next, let's talk about Seth. Seth is very similar to Yinhu in the sense that he's not very useful if you don't use him with a certain class. The difference is that Seth's niche lies with anomaly characters, with his ability to build AP, which anomaly characters really like. And since anomaly is a much larger class than Rupture, this limitation doesn't affect Seth as heavily as it does Pan. The main issue with Seth is that he only provides the AP buff to a single character, which doesn't sound too bad, but with most anomaly teams, you'll much rather run 2 anomaly characters and a support who can buff them both. In almost every disorder team, supports like Lucy and Rina are preferred over supports like Seth, simply due to how more than one character can take advantage of the buffs. That's why I feel like Seth is T4.
And quick aside, I know Seth can be extremely cracked, but I'm mainly focusing on purely his supportive capabilities, so please do not kill me in the comments.
Let's move over to talking about Soukaku. Soukaku is able to provide 500 or 1000 attack to a single agent on your team. Soukaku is also able to provide ice damage bonus with her additional ability and ice defense reduction through her M4. Soukaku's main problem is that it takes a decent amount of field time to get Soukaku's buffs fully up, at least compared to other supports, though this problem can be mitigated a bit by having her M2. Another issue with Soukaku is that her buff can only be applied to one character. This is fine for hyper-carry teams, but not the best for dual DPS teams like Disorder comps. Though it has to be said that if you're using an ice DPS, then Soukaku is one of the best options because even with the large windup, her buffs and debuffs are definitely viable. But with that being said, I feel like she lands herself in T2, mostly because Soukaku isn't worth building unless you have specific characters on your account. Now we are left with our final support, and trust me, I saved the best for last. You know her, you hopefully love her, and you saw her in the thumbnail, Nicole. Nicole is single-handedly the highest value A rank currently in the game. She's able to shred enemy defense by a massive 40%, which as a debuff is not only really impressive, but can also be taken advantage of by basically every character in the game. With her M6, Nicole is able to provide 15% crit rate for the duration of her buff, which only further boosts her utility. Not only that, but Nicole is an extremely cheap character to invest into, and all you need for her to perform well is to max out her core skills and get her as much ER as you can find, and then she's set. I could honestly spend an entire video singing Nicole's praises, but I'm sure you've already gotten an idea of how high value she is. Honestly, Nicole is in a tier of her own when it comes to the value she can provide to your account, so to properly represent this, I've made the executive decision to create a whole new tier above T0, the Nicole tier, and that's where she'll be placed. Okay, so that's our final tier list. I hope I've given y'all an accurate insight into the value of A ranks, and if you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment with your thoughts. And with that being said, I've been Kid Inatu, the one and only, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.